The Roadhouse remake just came out with Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor. This one was objectively a better movie than the original, but I have a very soft spot for the original. It's very 80s, very campy, very over the top, and it's just a fun movie because it's so bad. So if you haven't seen either one, there'll be spoilers. I'm going to go through the plot really quickly because it's really simple and straightforward. The plot of this movie is that Dalton was a former UFC fighter, killed a guy in a match, and then started doing underground fights for cash. And in this movie, he becomes a bouncer on one of the islands in the Keys in Florida. This woman hired him as a bouncer because she has a bunch of troublemakers. They're going for a small town feel because it's an island, so it's supposed to be isolated. And it's all corrupt and run by these corrupt people. And his job is to fight them off, beat them up, get them to stop sending people to try to destroy the bar, and forcing them into selling the bar called the Roadhouse. While he's there, he meets a doctor. They kind of become a thing. And this corrupt group that's running the town keeps sending more and more people. And they hire Conor McGregor, who's like a mercenary scumbag, to go in and wreck the bar. And at that point, Dalton, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, decides to leave. On his way to leave, he sees that they destroyed the bookstore, and he had befriended the little girl and her dad who run the bookstore. So he decides to stay, fight them all off, get the corruption out of the town. The Roadhouse stays open. Hurrah. This is very similar to the original, except in the original, Patrick Swayze goes out to the Midwest to clean up a bar. And it's the same kind of deal. The whole town's run by this corrupt guy. He's bullying the people that live there. And Patrick Swayze beats him up, saves the day. Everybody wins. Very 80s, very cheesy. This one is much more serious. So they definitely feel like two different movies, even though the plots are very similar. One of the big changes is that Patrick Swayze is very anti-violence in the original. And this one, Dalton, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, seems to kind of enjoy it. He kind of smirks and seems to enjoy beating people up. And in the original, Patrick Swayze was dating a woman. He didn't know she was married. The guy attacked him, and he accidentally killed him in self-defense. So then he becomes kind of guilt-ridden. He's a wanderer, just goes town to town being a bouncer. He's almost like a cheesy 80s version of Reacher. In this one, they go for the small town thing, the corruption thing, but he's more of a technical fighter, and it's more serious because he's UFC. I think the serious thing is okay, but it does kind of set a bit of a dour tone for how over the top the end of the movie is. At the end of the movie, the stunts start getting kind of ridiculous. There's a part where two speedboats are going at each other, and he jumps off of one and grabs onto the other one going the opposite direction. Like that type of shit. You know, a boat gets run up the shore into the bar. A truck drives through the bar. So I think the campiness works in the original better because the whole movie is just absurd because it's all so 80s and so cheesy that it's just funny. But I also have a soft spot for the original for personal reasons. So I'm a little bit biased. I lost an uncle a few years ago, and he was a huge Swayze fan. And he loved all of his movies, including Roadhouse. So I used to always make fun of him. And he wasn't gay, but I'm pretty sure he would have been for Patrick Swayze. But yeah, this one's fine. It's definitely less fun because it takes itself more seriously. Jake Gyllenhaal is ripped though, so good for him on that. And Conor McGregor looks huge. I've only ever seen him leaned out when he's fighting, and he looks big in this, like bulky. And I will say he has pretty much no potential as an actor outside of playing himself, which is fine for this role because he's just kind of the crazy mercenary who's supposed to come in and take care of Dalton. Yeah, I don't see him going much beyond that. Everybody else was fine. There's definitely improvements that could be made. They kind of made the other villains that weren't Conor McGregor feckless. There's some cheesy dialogue, some bad jokes. I'm not sure if a movie this simple needs to be 2 hours, but it was. And then obviously you have world building issues. Like YouTube is a thing that comes up in the movie, but it's like this town is so corrupt and the cops don't do anything, but no one's posted about it online. Like that type of shit. And I think the wandering man thing with no cell phone just works better pre-cell phone era. Even in the Amazon show, Reacher has to address this constantly about why he's not constantly in touch, and they have to modify the technology to fit the modern day and all that. So yeah, overall, it's fine. I would say it's a solid movie for what it is. It's on Prime, so if you've got a couple hours to kill and you're not doing much, it's probably worth watching. But if you're expecting the 80s movie, like he almost kills himself at the beginning, and then he decides not to at the last second, which is kind of the impetus for him being the bouncer to begin with, which I was kind of on. And then when you combine the seriousness for the first 3/4 of the movie with how over the top the last half hour is, you're kind of like, It goes from kind of like a solid movie to cheesy and not in a good way. Like when the whole thing is over the top, it's fun and it works. But when you take yourself seriously and then you go over the top, it just has a different feel. So yeah, I'm not going to go too long about it. I mean, it's Roadhouse. If you're into ripped dudes beating each other up and decent looking women in bikinis, Probably worth a watch. I wouldn't cancel plans for it, but worth checking out. So I'm going to leave it there for this one. Not a ton to say about a movie like this. It's not super deep, which is actually kind of a bummer. I wouldn't call the first one deep, but there is an interesting thing where Patrick Swayze is anti-violence because of his killing that guy. And this one goes more Punisher route where he kind of seems to embrace it and decides to just start fucking killing people by the end, which is pretty brutal. Not a terrible change, but definitely different in the theme and message and tonality. All right, well, I'm gonna leave it there. If you've seen it or the original, comment, let me know what you thought. I try to respond to all the comments that are insults, like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.